What's up guys, Martin from Desync in here with another video for you. Today we will look at the types of jobs you can set up in Desync and what's the difference between the two. So we'll start with our Woocommerce and Unleashed. These have been added from the wizard, using the wizard to create system. And in my Woocommerce container I have added a source standard API endpoint for customers. So let's get right into it. We will be synchronizing some customers between the two systems. So let's create a link between Woocommerce and Unleashed. Now let's say I want to only transfer data from Woocommerce to Unleashed, and so I will create a link between the two endpoints and I will give it a name, customer link. And now Desync asks me to select a job type, and that's because I am connecting two real-time endpoints. You won't see this if you're connecting, let's say, API, standard API endpoint with an RT endpoint, or two API endpoints, custom ones. So what's the difference between the two? Bidirectional synchronization. It's got some custom logic in the background, which works in your favor. Basically, Desync keeps track of the data transferred through that job, and it automatically decides if it needs to issue a create request or an update request. It basically saves the IDs of the object, and it's aware what data went through this job previously. This doesn't mean selecting the bidirectional synchronization doesn't mean that you need to synchronize data in two directions. You have the option to do that, but you can synchronize data in one direction only. And there is a direction settings on the job itself, on the link, which we will look at. So I will select bidirectional synchronization because I want to take advantage of the advanced logic and keeping track of data which are going through. And Desync will ask me to specify my master endpoint. Now, the notion of master and slave in Desync is there only for performance reasons, and as you may know, Desync is not one-to-one. It's actually one-to-many or many-to-many. So what do we do if you have, for example, 4 systems connected with one job, with one link, and there's one master? Let's say there's an update on the slave somewhere. What we do is we take the data from the slave and we map it to master first, to that master endpoint, and then from there we map to the remaining 2 if you have 4 systems connected. That just saves some processing time basically and data going through. So in my case, I'm synchronizing data from Woocommerce to Unleashed, so it's natural I select the Woocommerce customer endpoint as my master endpoint and I hit OK. Now Desync will go ahead and create a bidirectional job. How you can actually identify what type of job it is, you can look at the link. So in here you cannot see any arrows going in one direction. All you have is this square which identifies your master endpoint. Now, as I mentioned previously, there's a direction settings on this. So if I select the job, the link, you can see in the sidebar you have the direction settings in here, and by default Desync enters to slave, which is from master to slave. That's perfect for me. I would just save that. If I needed to change it, of course you can go into the drop down and you can select I just want to synchronize data in the opposite direction, which would be Unleashed to Woocommerce, or I want to synchronize data in both directions. So we'll select to slave, that's fine, and we'll do some mapping. And that's my customer map from Woo to Unleashed. I call it bidirectional, but that's just the job type. I'll hit OK. And you can see that even though I've selected direction to slave only, I still have the option to show the switch to the reverse mapping. Like right now I'm looking at the source being Woocommerce and the destination unleashed. If I switch to reverse, it's gonna flip the direction, and I have the option to actually map fields in the opposite direction. So let's go ahead and map something in here. Just quickly, we'll go with the email address as our customer code. The customer code, it needs to be unique in Unleashed. You can't actually, once it's created, once you create a customer with this customer code, you cannot even edit it in Unleashed, and it's sort of a primary key kind of. For Unleashed, they have the global unique identifier, the guid, as well, and that's what desync is using to keep track of the data which are coming through. But let's map the name in here. So we will concatenate the first name and last name into a customer name, and we'll give the customer an email. And that's pretty much it. So I don't want to map any other data, so I just disable the other empty unmapped fields. So there's basically what I did there, disable empty, that makes sure that when desync sends the request to Unleashed, it's going to be sending only these three fields to Unleashed, which is the customer code, name, and the email. We'll save the map, and we can test this out. So I know it's Woocommerce, so it's a webhook, so I actually need to go into Woocommerce and create a new customer. One little thing, we need to enable the link. Here we go. So if I go into users, let's add a new one. Let's call him new guy. Newguy.com. New guy, and it's a customer. And we hit add new user. So as soon as I hit that, we should see the link running. Here we go, it's running now. So it was mapped and pushed to Unleashed, and that's done. So if I go into Unleashed and search for my new guy, and that's probably not it, new guy, here we go. So we have that user in Unleashed. Now let's go into Woocommerce and make some changes to this customer. So as I mentioned previously, because we mapped the email address onto the customer code in Unleashed, we can't really modify this because Unleashed is looking at this as a primary key. So we'll modify the name, and that's our updated guy. Update the user in Woocommerce, and that should run the same, as you can see, and it hopefully pushed the changes to Unleashed. Here we go. So if I now click on this new guy, it's the name, it will be updated guy. Here we go, that's updated guy right there. So what desync actually did in the background, if you look at the job, it saved the GUID, basically the global unique identifier, and it's using that to update the customer, and it's aware that this is the same customer, so I just need to issue a update request. So if we look at the job 3465, we have some debug routes in here, so you can see that the request which was sent to Unleashed, it has got that global unique identifier appended to the URL, and desync also put the GUID in there automatically for us, even though we only mapped these three fields. So that's all happening for you in the background, and you don't have to take care of anything if you go with a bidirectional job. Now let's look at the other type. So let me delete this, and we will look at what happens when you create the one-way job. So again, we will create a link between the two, and this is our one-way customers job, and we will select the one-way transfer. It's going to ask you for the source endpoint because you're connecting basically to real-time endpoints, but as it's one way, you need to specify the data flow right here. So that's my source endpoint will be Woocommerce. I'm sending data to Unleashed. You can immediately see the difference on the canvas. So it created one-way jobs before we had that master square kind of icon on that link. Right now we have the arrows pointing in the direction where the data flows. So if we map this the same way, that's one-way customers map. So first thing you immediately notice is that you cannot switch to reverse because this is a one-way job. So it's just going from Woocommerce to Unleashed at this point. So we'll map it in exactly the same way. We'll do the email to a customer code. We concatenate the name, and we'll map the email field. And we will disable empty fields. Hit save. Now let's go back to Canvas. And that's all enabled. So let's see what happens if I try to run this. So we'll create a new user. This is my old guy. And it's a customer, add new user. That should start running. And an error happens. If we look at the error, it tells you that the endpoint with this ID has not the shared key set. It talks about desync ID. And that's because you've created a one-way job. So all that custom logic for the creates and updates and keeping of the IDs, the desync IDs, is pretty much gone from this job on the one-way job. So what you have to do is go to the destination endpoint, click on that endpoint, and select your shared key in here. This will basically be used in desync internally as the primary key, or the link between the same records in both systems, in Woocommerce and Unleashed. So from the mapping, we know that we are using the customer code in Unleashed, and we mapped the email address onto it. So this is the destination. So I'll say I want the customer code to be used as the unique ID. I need to make sure that it's mapped in the mapping, and we've done it before, but you need to make sure that if you select the shared key, it has to be mapped to something unique on the other system. So I know that email addresses in Woocommerce of customers are unique, so I just map it into it. This would be like for inventory, for example, this would be your SKU. For a sales order, it could be the sales order ID and so on. But you need to make sure that you map it correctly. Now, if a job runs, desync will make note of the email. the first time around, if it doesn't exist in the desync database, the email, we will issue a create request to unleashed. If it does exist and we have a record of it, we will flip the method and we will try to update it in unleashed. So let's have a look at this. Now with that shared key set, we should be able to push that customer into unleashed. So if I just find my old guy in here and update him, I don't think I need to make any changes. We'll see. Update users. So that's running and done. So we should be able to see our old guy in here. New customers. And there he is. And if I update his last name and update the user now, desync will look up the email address which we mapped to the customer code, which is this one. It will look it up into the internal database, and it's gonna find it. So it's gonna substitute that primary key in the request, and it's gonna update the customer in unleashed. So let's look at that. Update user. That's running. And it was successful. So if I click on the old guy, we should have old man in there. And here we go. So that's pretty much the difference between the bidirectional job and the one-way transfer. Now the shared key, it's usually I guess the rule of thumb is that when you create a link between two real-time endpoints, there's no reason for you to choose a one-way transfer, because you can always set up the direction of the data flows. The one-way transfer job is more for like custom API endpoint. If you try to connect a custom API endpoint into a real-time endpoint, this would be usually a batch. So you would have multiple customers kind of coming in. You would use the batch splitter for it and then send it one by one into a real-time customer endpoint with the shared key setup. So that's pretty much where the shared key comes in. It's there to mimic the bidirectional job logic, which decides what request to issue to the destination system, if it's create or update. I hope this is helpful, and I'll be back with more videos for you.